I grew up in Detroit, as you know, or as you probably know, and one of the most iconic buildings in Detroit was the Packard plant, where they manufactured Packard automobiles. These were luxurious cars. In fact, God, a couple of years ago, the people who own Gene Harlow's old Packard brought the Packard back to one of Gene Harlow's old houses, and we actually got to sit in the car. That was really, really cool. That Packard was beautiful. And someone I know had owned a 1948 Packard too. And it was kind of funny because my dad worked at the Packard plant and probably helped assemble that car. I don't know exactly what parts my dad was working on, but my dad worked at the Packard plant. It opened originally, I think it was 1903, and it grew into this massive, I think a 3.5 million square foot complex. I think it was 40 acres or something around East Grand Boulevard in Detroit, really close to where my grandparents lived. And I think my brother said that you could actually see the water tower from my grandparents' backyard. So it was really close, and obviously I have family ties to it as well. So I was at the storage unit today, and I found this box of the Packard plant memorabilia. See, it was closed in, I think it closed in 58. And over the years, it was used since then as storage mostly, but the buildings were literally rotting away. Little by little, you could see, people, it was just sort of crumbling. Scrappers got to it, of course, and started tearing it apart, getting all the metal out of it. The Packard plant had this beautiful sort of bridge over the road. It was the street. It was Concord Street. And this beautiful bridge. It was actually part of the assembly line. My dad was telling me, and in 2014, my brother and we were just kind of cruising around Detroit, looking at the old neighborhood, and we went to the Packard plant, and we're poking around, and this guy comes out, and it was weird. Yeah. The guy started walking toward us. I think my brother goes, "We're going to die. This is it. We're going to die." And the guy ended up being really nice. He was sort of a freelance, I would say, security guard to watch over the place. Because by the time the 1990s came around, it was, as I said, it was crumbling. And there were a lot of the buildings were just sort of disappearing. And it became a, urban explorer hangout. And this guy was sort of a freelance security guard there. And we were looking around. He was really nice. And he says, "Well, do you want to see the inside of it?" And we're like, "Sure." And he said, "Well, it'll be about $20. I'll give you, give me $20. And I'm like, "Okay." And that we didn't know the guy. He was nice enough, but that was when my brother and I were going, "This is bad. This is really sketchy." But we ended up getting to go through the plant, and the scrappers had already gone through it, and it was dangerous. I mean, like the elevator shaft was just empty, or there were just holes in the floor, in the ground that went down like several stories that we were just walking by. It was really dangerous, and it was really cool.
To the Historical Museum, Detroit Historical Museum.
I was just there over
and they have I think it's a 1915 Packard inline 8-cylinder motor. Perfect condition.
Wow.
It's massive. That's massive. And they got a little bit of a story, not too much. It just shows the name of the man, Henry Joy. They named Joy Road after him. And then you're test knowledge. I'll say, how Oakland County got their name? From the old Oakland automobile.
Oh, I didn't know that.
St. Clair County too. St. Clair County had the old Sinclair plant built up there. The Chrysler plant's built up there on Marysville. Yeah.
Now, are you from Detroit originally?
Sir?
Are you from Detroit?
I grew up about when I went to boot camp and I went through my Green Beret training. We trained with Navy SEALs and all. They hated our jungle training, but I didn't hate the water because I grew up on the river. Matter of fact, me and my buddy used to swim from Lakewood Park across the Peach Island all the time.
Wow.
We put flippers on and swim and try to count how many flips it would take to get across. Oh, we had a ball. Those were the days.
Yeah, I was glad I got the tail end of it.
Oh yeah, those were the days. How old are you?
52.
Oh yeah, I'm 56. We got the tail end of the hippies.
Yeah.
We did.
Some of the, they used to, my sister, and probably Rick, you probably know more about Plum Street than I do. But,
Plum Street was gone by the time we were.
I've only ever heard of it.
Oh, it was gone by the time we were teenagers. But you know what? On Ashland, when you turn on Ashland,
Yeah.
and you go over the hump,
Yeah.
an old English Tudor house.
Yeah.
Now, remember the old Playboy Club?
Yeah.
Well, the guy who ran it used to live there. We used to have parties in his house. I'm telling you, charged $5 a head, had all kegs in there, bangs in there. Oh man, I remember Leslie West from Mountain came up there.
The course commercial.
The White Flight.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if I ever saw the commercials for a Coors Light. Did movies here, all kinds of shit. This floor, they already had oil. These elevator shafts. I found a guy and name and footprint from 1954
Wow.
at one of the old workstations. The only thing I didn't like about the Army, it took me away from my kids. I never knew where I was going to go. I was always going to call. This is part of the assembly line. It was pulled by a cable. It would come up here, and the cars would roll across each workstation, and then cable would go back down. They'd hook them back up and roll across. Watch yourself there, though. Another one. That's not good.
Wow. Mental.
During the war, there was more women working here. And it was patrolled by Army Jeeps because they did all the motors in here. The president of Packard was so afraid we were going to get invaded by, he had a shaft up on the 3rd floor at his office, a tunnel that went down into an incinerator that would burn the plans for the Merlin motors.
Really?
So the enemy would never get hold of them.
That's insane.
Well, we were really close on the West Coast.
Oh, no, I believe, it's such a crazy story to think of it in reality,
Now, the last time I went by it, it was just last summer, actually, June of 2024, and I got a couple of pictures of it because it actually is completely empty, and they're demolishing the entire thing now, and that water tower and that bridge was destroyed. So there's only 2 kind of cool buildings that are left, and as I understand it, they're going to save those buildings. One of them used to have Packard over the door, but scrappers got to that. But these 2 cool old buildings, admin buildings, I guess, are still going to be preserved. But anyway, when my brother and I went through there, the guy let me take some souvenirs. I don't know what's in here. I mean, I know a couple of the things that are in here, but I'm not quite sure what. Just one thing I'm sure of. So I figured you guys would like to see it. Why not? So, oh, look at that. Okay, here's a picture of that I took in here. And you could see, so this was that cool bridge I was telling you about, and this is the plant, what it looked like then, and this is what it looked like, a photograph I took when we were there. I took, of course, a ton more pictures, and I think this is actually upside down. I think this is the ceiling and that's the ground. I don't know when no, it's right because you can see the slats of the floor. And actually, I've got some of those floor slats. The guy let me take. And I have to be careful because I think there's nails in it. I'm gonna scratch up this table. But yeah, so we were there in 2014. I marked it. So it's so cool because my dad probably, walked on these very floors. And the other floors were filled, were these wooden bricks. The floors were covered or made up of these wooden bricks. And my dad told me that these wood bricks were coated in creosote. And then I remember my sister was like, don't touch them. But I thought, well, my dad worked on these and probably people worked on these floors for decades. And I mean, I'm not discounting the danger of it, but imagine these people were immersed in this. And creosote has been known to prompt cancer, all kinds of cancer, respiratory issues, skin cancer, lung cancer, kidney, scrotum, prostate, rectal cancer, from long-term exposure to creosote. So these guys were I don't know what that is, but these guys were in it. But Packard manufactured some pretty amazing vehicles, including hearses, which I think I saved a couple of pictures of hearses, Packard hearses, over the years. But so these are ruins of the famous Detroit Packard plant. Demolition. Actually, several of the buildings were demolished in. I think they started in 2022. I think by the end of this year, 2024, it'll be leveled, I believe, if not very, very close to it, and those other buildings will be preserved. And I'd say kind of cool because it's family history for me. My Aunt Shelley, my godmother, worked there forever as a administrative assistant, secretary is what they called them back then. And my dad worked on the assembly line in 1947. So a little bit of my family history, a little bit of Detroit history, and look at that, the Packard plant. Rest in peace, Packard plant. 40,000 people worked there at one point in time. And it became a real symbol of what happened to Detroit. It was a real easy, low-hanging fruit to go to the Packard plant and show it's just disintegrating. And here's an example of what happened to Detroit. It was used in TV shows and movies if they wanted to show something, really awful. So, but yeah, excellent background for horror movies probably, or something like that. But a good example of the terrible things that happened to Detroit. And now it'll be leveled. Hopefully it'll be there's even this cool old motel next to it. And I believe there was a supermarket and an old appliance store. There was one of those ghost signs that said Arlen's Appliances. And I don't think that was a national chain. That was totally a Detroit thing. I took so many still photographs on the inside of the Packard plant. So for the next few minutes, this is a slideshow of photographs that I took that day in 2014. briefly back home to see the remnants of the Packard plant. That's where the bridge was. This is summer 2024. Those sort of ghosts of the past, probably gone by now. But yeah, so anyway, Detroit City, and there you are. Rest in peace, Packard plant.
You heard me.